Alrighty, guys, it is Qaaman here today, and it is time. Is it time, James?
I am pretty sure that it is time, my good sir. And what is it time for?
It is time for us to do our Super Bowl prediction. After actually technically 17 weeks of the NFL season, after the preseason, after every other playoff round, we are here to make a Super Bowl prediction. Not a Pro Bowl prediction, right, James? Because we did a video on that.
Oh, we did. It is time for a Super Bowl prediction, as Qaaman and I are going to analyze every single angle of this game, and we are going to predict who we feel will walk out of Arizona with the Lombardi Trophy.
So without wasting any more time, let's get straight into this video. So, James, I want you to start off by telling the fans who you think will win this Super Bowl.
Well, first off, let's look at my track record. I really started watching football during the 05 season, which was when the Steelers defeated the Seahawks, ironically enough, to win their 5th Super Bowl. I have only been incorrect on one Super Bowl, counting that one, since then, and that would be the one the Steelers lost to Green Bay. I've got every other one right. Both Giants, Patriots, Ravens, Niners, every one of them.
Wow.
My predictions are that the Seattle Seahawks will walk out of Arizona with the Lombardi Trophy. And I have a couple of good reasons why I believe they will do it. Number one, if we look at the Patriots, the last 2 times they went into the Super Bowl, they were carrying a far superior offense than they had now. They were scoring at least 5 or 6 more points per game. And let's not lose sleep on the undefeated team from 2007 that was the highest scoring offense in league history.
Right.
They are coming into this game with an inferior offense, with receivers like Brandon LaFell and Julian Edelman, who are very good players in their own right. But think about it. They're going up against a better defense than they've ever faced in a Super Bowl. This Seattle Legion of Boom is not going to play nice. The only mismatch that I see is Rob Gronkowski, and I think Cam Chancellor can actually somewhat neutralize him. If Cam Chancellor can neutralize Gronkowski and the other D-backs take care of what they're supposed to do, Seattle will hold them under 20 points. Now, for the offensive side, New England has had an up-and-down season playing the run. If you look at where they rank defensively in terms of run defense, it's a respectable 9th in the league in yards allowed and yards allowed per attempt. But in 3 of their last 4 games, they've allowed 100 yards rushing, and twice this year they've allowed a team to rush for 200 yards. So they can be run on. They can definitely be run on. And I think that Seattle line with Marshawn Lynch, who I'm predicting is my MVP, can move the football on the ground consistently against this Patriots defense. And the final reason is Russell Wilson. Russ Wilson, I swear, that guy, he is so elusive. His size is such a benefit to him. You wouldn't think that it would be because, I mean, when he stands on a stack of books, he's not even 6 feet tall. And the fact that he just keeps moving around, he just keeps eluding the pressure and finding the guy downfield. And that receiving core the Seahawks have, Baldwin, Curse, it's underrated. I say Seattle wins this game 27-23. Now, Qaaman, what do you think? Because I know all the subs want to know what Qaaman thinks.
You know, this is a very complicated Super Bowl because both teams are so different in so many ways. And if there was a team that I want to win, it would be Seattle. And who do I think will win? Well, I think Seattle should win this game. However, as a Dolphins fan and being in the same AFC East division with the New England Patriots, I truly feel like something slick is going to happen. I feel like the Patriots are going to make a quirky move because we always know, James, that they pull it out by making offensive linemen catch touchdowns. I mean, they do some seriously ridiculous plays. Bill Belichick and Bill Belichick with his weird, awkward onside kicks that he occasionally does from time to time. I think that when we look at it from that perspective, I think New England has a much better shot than Denver did last year.
I agree with you. I think this game will be a lot more competitive because the thing about it is Denver went with their standard formations and Seattle just blew right through them and they knew what to expect. New England's never going to give you the same thing too many times.
Well, one thing is, James, is we admit that Seattle's defense may not be as potent as it was last year, but their defensive front seven is incredible. And like you agree, like we both said last year, that Peyton Manning hadn't faced a defensive front like that all year. Not
And
that athletic.
I mean, and if you look at, the defensive fronts that Tom Brady's gone against, let's at least stick to 4-3 schemes because the teams like the Chiefs and the Packers run 3-4s. The Buffalo Bills have a very similar front four. And the Buffalo Bills, I know they did pull Brady, but at the same time, he only put up 9 points in one half.
Right.
And if you look at what happened in the game against the Detroit Lions, though, that's a little bit of a different story. But the thing about it is Detroit doesn't have the secondary to boot like New England does. Oh, by the way, that game was in Foxborough. So that's a big difference right there.
Right.
The fact it's on a neutral field does change things a lot. I mean, Kansas City was all over them, but that's early in the season. I really can't count that game.
Well, one thing that I wanted to ask you, James, is what would you say will be the major impact? Because we both agree that in terms of this Super Bowl is essentially the clash of the cornerbacks, and we understand that the cornerback is not a very popular position like a running back, a receiver, or even a quarterback, obviously. But how do you think the corners will play a role in this game? Because if you think about it, when you look at New England, they don't have, like you said, a conventional number one, consistent receiver that Brady throws to. I mean, I guess you could say Gronkowski, but he's a tight end. And because of his size, he's a huge mismatch for a lot of other opposing tight ends. So obviously they're not going to put a guy like Sherman on, Gronkowski unless they're trying to double him. So, which they probably will, by the way, James, now that I think about it, they probably will double Gronk.
My opinion on Gronk is that I think the linebacking core should be able to take care of him along with Cam Chancellor. I already said to it. But, comparing the cornerbacks, we've got Revis for the Patriots and Sherman for the Seahawks.
Do you agree that they're the two best corners in the NFL?
I do believe they're the two best corners. In fact, I don't think that there is a close third. People want to proclaim that Patrick Peterson's really good or that
Aqib
Talib is good name. They're not in the same breath because
Vontae Davis, James, come on, former Dolphins.
Vontae Davis is a very good football player, but he's not the elite status that Sherman and Revis are. But here's the thing that a lot of people sleep on. When a lot of people decide not to go to Sherman, and the Seahawks only give up 12, 13 points, that means they're throwing directly at Byron Maxwell, and Byron Maxwell is making plays. So the thing about it is that their number two corner is still very good. Now, comparing Revis to Sherman, because I know a lot of people want to just debate on who's better, I think Revis is a better pure cover corner in terms of shutting out a receiver. But I think Sherman does everything else better. Run stop, run support, pass deflecting, intercepting, scoring, Ultimately, they're two different styles, but again, they fit their defenses perfectly. But the ultimate in this game is going to be which receiving core makes a bigger impact, because both teams are – I'm not talking tight ends. I'm talking pure receivers. Which receiving core makes an impact? And also, which team stops the run better? That's pretty much going to be it. Because Brady can go out there and throw for a bunch of yards. If his receivers don't do much and he throws a lot of interceptions, what's it do to his team?
Right. Well, James, I mean, that brings us to the next main aspect that we need to cover on offense. Now that we talked about the corners that we both agree are the two best in the game, when we compare LeGarrette Blount with Mr. Skittles, I don't even think it's close.
I don't think it's close either, but here's the reason why a lot of people think it's kind of close. Because they're similar runners, but Marshawn Lynch is more stocky and sturdy. LeGarrette Blount's a little more lanky. That's the difference. But the difference is that they both do what they can do for their respective teams. I mean, look at what LeGarrette Blount's done in New England in the playoffs. It's been absurd. And then you have what Marshawn Lynch has done his entire Seahawks career, which is just bowl people over.
Right.
The thing is that look at what they're going to be running against. LeGarrette Blount's going to be running into a brick wall, and the Patriots' run defense, although solid, you can run the football on them. You can't, like I said, their opponents have usually done best this year when they've gotten the Patriots away from home. Mm-hmm. 2 of the top 3 best performances on the ground against the Patriots were away from home, and 4 of the best 6. So the thing is, you get them out of their stadium, out of their comfort zone, they will have some trouble stopping the run.
Right. Which when you think about it, since football is still a football game, you'd think, why is that? Because you could still commit the same strategy. But I guess stats don't lie, right?
Counting playoffs, the Patriots have allowed 8 opponents to rush for 100 yards. Counting playoffs, the Seahawks have allowed for 8 opponents as well to rush for 100 yards. So that's a pretty interesting statistic as well. But I don't look too much into Carolina and Green Bay running for a lot of yards for this reason. Eddie Lacy,
he's a
Newton,
Pro Bowl type.
Jonathan Stewart, D'Angelo Williams, those guys are far better runners than LeGarrette Blount.
Especially Eddie Lacy. I mean, I think Eddie Lacy is one of the elite running backs.
And the thing about it is this. They held Aaron Rodgers and that Packers offense down. I think they can do the same to Tom Brady.
I feel like if the Patriots are going to win, they're going to have to commit a completely different strategy than what they've been doing all year. They're not going to be predictable. You know that.
They're not. They're going to have to do things that the Seahawks have never seen because, think about it, Dan Quinn, the defensive coordinator for Seattle, who's been linked to Atlanta as their next head coach, he is such an extremely smart defensive guy. What the Seahawks do better than any team is make halftime adjustments. Maybe New England's about in that league too, but think about it. How many times have we seen Seattle look average going into the half, but come out in the second half and play great? Like let's look at the game whenever they took on the Packers in the divisional round, the game we just watched, which was one of the most ridiculous playoff games you and I have ever seen. In the first half, they were outscored 16-0. In the second half and overtime, they outscored them 28-6.
Right.
This team makes halftime adjustments, and they make the plays and they make the adjustments necessary to win. That's why they're in the Super Bowl going for another number 2 title, and why Green Bay is not.
Well, James, I mean, we're comparing so many different things here. Now, we compared running games. We gave edge to Seattle. We compared defense. It's not even close. Edge Seattle. Receiving core, James. Gronk really gives New England... I mean, I think that in terms of talent, they're around the same, but I think that because of the way the Patriots utilize their receivers, like Edelman, who looks like a superstar on the Patriots, who would probably be a bench player on another team.
Edelman would probably not see the field if he played for the Steelers, and he'd probably be a number 3 guy if he played for the Dolphins.
You're probably right about that. I mean, and we have Brian Hartline as our number 1 receiver next to Mike Wallace. So, which I don't even really consider a number 1 receiver. But that's another conversation for another day. When you compare receiving cores, I think that New England gets a slight edge. So now we're saying that Seattle has a better running game and a better defense. New England has a better receiving game. Now let's get into the next major category, which is quarterback.
If the reason why I think Seattle has a very good chance to win this game is something that I did a little bit of research, and I watched a little bit of Seattle's game against the Packers. I watched it against the Panthers. I also watched a good bit of their game earlier this year where they played a couple other offenses, like they played in the week 1 against Green Bay. I watched the game against the Eagles, and I also watched the game against the Giants, teams with more efficient passing games. You see the trend?
Yeah.
Well, what I noticed is that Seattle is underrated in getting pressure up the middle on the quarterback and pretty much overwhelming the interior 3 linemen. Tom Brady, for all his greatness, when you watch the games in his career where he historically has struggled, watch what the opponent's defensive fronts do. They get so much pressure up the middle because think about it this way. The reason why the Steelers and the Dolphins, no offense, get beat to death by the Patriots is because they specialize in edge rushing. They specialize in edge rushing. Like we've had Harrison and Woodley, you've had Joey Porter, Cameron Wake, and Deion Jordan, and Brady just steps up in the pocket, has all day to throw, finds his guys. When he goes against the Ravens, the Chiefs,
guys who can rush defensively up the middle, that causes a lot of problems.
He can't. He's not as mobile as Cam Newton or Aaron Rodgers. He's not going to be able
or
to
Russell
make
Wilson
plays with his legs. Here's the difference. The Seahawks had to respect, even with his calf injury, the Seahawks had to respect Aaron Rodgers' legs in the NFC title game.
And he wasn't even 100% though, James.
Correct. They're not going to have to worry about respecting it with the Patriots because Tom Brady is not going to get out and make a 30-yard run like a Tim Tebow or even an Aaron Rodgers.
Or
He's
Russell
going to stay
Wilson.
firm, or Russ Wilson. He's going to stay firm in the pocket. Now, as for the Patriots, how many quarterbacks have they seen this year that have played remotely like Russell Wilson? I mean, look at the guys they placed. They played Andy Dalton. They played against, not Matt Cass. They played against Alex Smith. They played against Cutler. They played against Peyton Manning, Andrew Luck. Traditional drop-back pocket passers who aren't very mobile, maybe possible exception of Luck.
Yeah.
They have not gone against anybody who can maneuver and move around the pocket like Russell Wilson. And I know Darrelle Revis is probably going to have a decent game, but guys like Luke Wilson, guys like Jermaine Kearse, the number 2 receivers and the tight ends, just the way they can get around and make plays down the field, the way the coverages break down, because that's the biggest problem for a secondary. When the coverage breaks down, it's usually because the quarterback found some time in the pocket and could move around. I expect something like that on Sunday.
I see. And, it's kind of like what a lot of people say is common, which is common, is that Tom Brady tap dances in the pocket.
Yeah, and Russell Wilson's moving around like he's running track pretty much.
So
see, the Patriots have not played against a quarterback who's going to be like, even though Cam Newton is mobile, he's not as fast as Russell Wilson.
Right.
He's bigger, not faster.
So, James, let me get this straight. You're essentially saying that even though Brady's a better passer than Russell Wilson ever would be, you're saying that because of Wilson's diversity on the offensive end, that the edge actually slightly goes to the Seahawks in that way.
It really is a pick 'em in that regard, but then again, they're two different styles of quarterbacking. They really are. And the thing about it is, last year was the same thing. The Broncos rolled in with an immobile quarterback and a high-powered offense, and the Seahawks held them to 8 points. Again, there's no way in hell they're going to limit the Patriots to just 8 points. We both can agree on that because of how smart and tricky the Seahawks play.
Not to mention, the Patriots' pass rushing isn't that, they're not that impressive.
Their pass rush actually has generated more sacks on the year than Seattle's, which is a surprising statistic. But when you think about Seattle's pass rush, they're more or less just designed to cause deflections for the secondary and to make the linebackers' job easy. They're not really designed to be pure pass rushers. They're more or less designed to stop the run and do everything else. And that's what makes their defense so good. They can get after the quarterback with just 4 guys. They hardly ever have to blitz. So when Bobby Wagner or KJ Wright or Malcolm Smith wants to rush off the edge, chances are they're not going to be able to stop it.
Well, the reason why I said that Seattle's pass rush was better is part of what you said, James, that they don't necessarily need as many guys to pass rush. But I was also considering the fact that when you compare the different teams that Seattle has accumulated sacks against, even though New England has accumulated more sacks, you got to factor in the same thing, James. Remember, they've gone up against a lot more traditional quarterbacks, which would obviously lead to a lot more sacks for them. So, in a way, New England's pass rushing statistic is overrated, is kind of what I was trying to point out.
It is. I agree with you. And again, there's 2 different types of quarterbacks at play. You got a guy in Russell Wilson who's going to move around like a Fran Tarkenton, which is a great analogy when you think about it. And then you got Tom Brady, who's basically just going to sit back there like a Joe Montana. Little bit of mobility, not really going to hurt you, more or less going to try to out-accuracy you down the field.
I would actually say there were 3 types. I'd look at 3 models. I'd look at Brady and Peyton Manning as one. I'd look at Russell Wilson and Cam Newton and Colin Kaepernick as another. And I'd look at Andrew Luck and Aaron Rodgers as like a true hybrid.
But more or less for the sake of the argument, it's just the fact that it's 2 different defenses, but it's 2 different quarterbacks they're going after.
Right.
And let's put it this way. If Seattle can get consistent pressure up the middle, when they play against the Patriots in the Super Bowl, they'll win this game. They will. It depends on that front seven. They pressure Brady up the middle, they will walk out of Arizona as champions. If they don't, then the Patriots will walk out of Arizona as champions.
Well, keep this in mind, though, James. I mean, New England does have a relatively good offensive line, much better from the one last year. But without, and ironically, they're playing better, and if Logan Mankins was here, I would probably say edge Patriots.
If Logan Mankins was still a member of the New England Patriots, as good as he is, that would really tip the balance of power in the favor of Seahawks. But when you think about it, again, all those years Brady has sat back and dissected our two favorite teams because we focus so much on edge rushing. Brady could just step up in the pocket and just dink and dunk us to death. He's not going to be able to do that with Seattle because they're going to watch the tape and they're going to find out the weaknesses of the Patriots offense. Because again, putting up 45 points on Indianapolis is not that impressive, especially when Marshawn Lynch, LeGarrette Blount pretty much beat them by himself.
Twice,
yeah. Ultimately, again, edge Seahawks because of the defense and because of the fact that New England had a better offense the last two times they were in the Super Bowl, and they played against a weaker defense than they're going against this time, and both times they lost.
Well, James, there's two more major things that I want to compare. Next element, now that we've compared defense, we've compared rushing games, we've compared receiving, and we've compared quarterbacks, let's compare coaching. What do you have to say?
The coaching edge is a big one in New England because of Bill Belichick. I mean, come on. Yeah. Belichick is the greatest football mind of the past 20 years, easily.
Even better than Tony Sparano?
Much better than Tony Sparano.
That's a joke, guys. It's an inside joke between me and James. You guys probably wouldn't get it.
He's a Dolphins fan, ladies and gentlemen. Tony Sparano's a good coach, but back to this story. Dan Quinn is going to have a good game plan for the Seahawks defense, and Pete Carroll struggles with the Jets and the Patriots in the 90s. I think was some of the best things could have happened to him because if not for that, he would not have gone on to USC and built a championship team. And what he learned in USC is translated very well to the NFL. In fact, if anything, coaching at USC for so long, I think really helped him because he got the chance to see certain players and to get the inside scoop on which guys were good draft picks. Like he stole Richard Sherman out of the draft. He stole, Cam Chancellor. He stole a bunch of good players by just being around colleges.
Well, I mean, James, now that you think about it, I mean, you say edge goes to Bill Belichick, but let's actually compare the defensive, offensive coordinators and the defensive coordinators. How do you think that matches up? I agree with you with Bill Belichick, but how would you compare the defensive coordinators as compared to the offensive coordinators in terms of experience, and who do you think gets the edge?
Well, the coordinators in New England, their offensive coordinator is Josh McDaniels, and their defensive coordinator is Matt Patricia. I don't know much about Patricia. I know enough about McDaniels. He was a bust of a coach in Denver because he was too conservative, but I've seen enough spats between him and Tom Brady in the sideline to know that it's pretty much between him and Tom. It's pretty much Tom's decision on basically what they want to run.
Dang.
Because, I mean, you don't become a two-time MVP and a three-time Super Bowl champion without deciding what you're going to call. And in Seattle, you got Darrell Bevell as the offensive coordinator and Dan Quinn as the defensive coordinator. The funny thing about Seattle's struggles earlier in the season when they were 6-4 and 3-3 is that they were still working through the kinks of trying to get rid of Percy Harvin because they did all those things in practice for all those, formations with Percy Harvin, and then they just dumped them like a third of the way into the season to the Jets, and then they had to kind of realize what it was like, to not have them. Because think about it. When you base so much off one guy who's so dynamic and then you don't have him there, it takes a while to adjust to that. But the Seahawks receivers have adjusted beautifully. I mean, Doug Baldwin, and Jermaine Kearse, between them, they barely have 100 catches. They barely have 1,300 yards, and they only have 4 touchdowns. Marshawn Lynch has the most receiving touchdowns on the Seahawks.
That's funny.
They are so good as a group because if Patrick Peterson's one of the best corners in the game, if he says they're underrated, then that's pretty much a good answer to yes, they are very underrated.
So, I mean, in terms of defensive coordinators, we have to give the edge to Seattle based off of performance. Offensive coordinators, I mean, from what you've said, I mean, you're basically saying that it's Tom Brady. So, I mean, I guess if you really consider it that way, then James, we're gonna have to give New England the edge in terms of coaching.
I give New England the edge in terms of coaching, yeah, because, again, Bill Belichick. And Pete Carroll's a very good head coach. He's become a very good NFL head coach.
Well,
but I do believe that Bill Belichick is still a superior NFL head coach.
Well, there's two more things to talk about now. Now we have to say this, James. Who will be the... Well, actually, before we get to that, why did Peyton Manning, another great quarterback with arguably the best offense in history, come out so flat last year against this same team and his receivers? Like, the entire offense just collapsed. Why do you think that happened? And what could New England do different that Denver didn't?
All right, number one, Denver very rarely altered their schemes last year. They ran a lot of the same schemes repetitively, and they thought, like, a lot of their same formations on offense. They thought that they were just going to roll in there, and I think that they're still shocked to this day that they only put up 8 points in that defense, because anybody watching felt that they were going to probably put up at least 25 points on that defense, even as good as it was. But, again, Sherman, Maxwell, Chancellor, and Thomas, the receivers for Denver were not expecting to be as tough, as physical. Excuse me. They were not expecting them to bump and run. They weren't expecting the physical play on the line of scrimmage. But the other thing I don't think they were prepared for was just the fact that Seattle's front four was overwhelming. It was. They didn't have to pass rush or blitz. They got enough pressure on Manning with their front four. And the final thing is this. Denver may have had that great regular season offense and put up like 40 points a game, but against the Chargers and the Patriots, they scored 24 and 26 points. That's 50 total. Did anybody really expect them to put up that total against Seattle if that was such a far cry from what they've been putting up? That was why I picked Seattle in that game. I felt that, you know what? They do not look that good right now. They look very average. They're not going to manhandle them, but they're going to have a better time than people think. But the other thing that I think was the difference is the fact that we always talk about Peyton Manning versus Tom Brady, and you and I have discussed this. We're going to do a discussion on this down the road, so all you subscribers out there, we're going to do this. And Tom Brady's numbers in the playoffs, they're not that much greater than Peyton Manning's, which we will both agree on. But in the big moments, he plays better. He plays much better than Peyton. You look at Peyton Manning's drop-off from the regular season to postseason, it's ridiculous. You look at Tom Brady's drop-off, again, ridiculous, but on the same level, Brady didn't play bad when he didn't have to. When Brady played bad in the playoff games, they won. The AFC title game in 2011, the fact that his first playoff run as a Patriots quarterback, they had 3 offensive touchdowns? Again, Brady plays better in the big moments. He's going to have a better idea of what to do. And the thing is, Denver has no up-tempo in their offense. Their up-tempo offense is weak. What they will do is they'll take their time, they'll get up to the huddle, they'll call the play, and the Seahawks had plenty of time to adjust. New England's not going to give them time to adjust. They're going to rush them with the no huddle and see how they like it.
That's a
big
huge difference.
Thing. The no huddle prevents you from substituting, and it gets your defensive linemen to fatigue.
Because you basically have... I mean, the thing is that Peyton does run a lot of no huddle plays too, but...
Not to the extent that the Patriots... I know the Eagles get excited for having a great up-tempo offense, but it is nothing compared to how quickly they can run plays in New England. It is extremely, extremely quick.
I'll say this really quick, James, because I agree with a lot of what you said. One thing that I want to add, though, is when it pertains to coaching. I mean, James, you said that one of the major reasons last year why Denver, came out so flat in that Super Bowl was you think that John Fox was way too conservative.
I do. I think that in general it might have been. I think the fact that he was too conservative, I think, hurt him more in other playoff games. Mm-hmm. But I think more or less in that Super Bowl, the Broncos just got manhandled.
They just went up against a much better team.
They were basically like a fly trying to take on a fly swatter.
Jeez. Well, James, it looks like it's about that time. Who will be the Super Bowl MVP? I'll say right now that based off of offensive, I guess you can say offensive value, how valuable an offense is, And I think in part due to all this media stuff that's been going on, we're going to do a video about Marshawn Lynch in the future. I think Marshawn Lynch is going to end up being the Super Bowl MVP. Who won the Super Bowl MVP last year? I remember it was a defensive player. I forgot.
It was Malcolm Smith. He had the interception return for a touchdown.
Yeah.
I picked Lynch to be the MVP because I think Russell Wilson's going to have a decent game. He'll throw for his 250-some yards and maybe 2 or 3 touchdowns, maybe a pick. But the Seattle Seahawks offense starts and goes with Marshawn Lynch. He is the catalyst because he is a better receiver out of the backfield than people think. He is a lot quicker on his feet than a lot of people think. People just assume that he's this bowling ball. Well, you know what? He is very, very shifty, and he knows how to move around and make plays. He's a decent blocker, so it's like another protector for Russell Wilson. And think about it this way. He's had to deal with the media all week and the past 2 weeks, really, because of his, struggles and whatnot with the media and how much, he dislikes them and whatnot. He's going to be an angry guy come Sunday. He's going to want to bust some heads. Like, I can just see it. When he gets 10 yards down the field and Revis Island tries taking him on, goodbye, Darrelle Revis. He's just going to truck him like 10 yards. Ultimately, I'd say Marshawn Lynch has his game, maybe 23, 24 carries, 140-something yards, and maybe a touchdown or 2. I think he's got a game like that in him. But if I had to pick a secondary player to win MVP, I'd probably have to go with one of the Seattle Seahawks front guys because, again, that pressure up the middle is going to be key.
Anybody in particular?
Michael Bennett or Cliff Averill, one of those guys.
I think Michael Bennett would have a better chance, but that's just my personal opinion.
Benett's the best lineman they have, so he would have the best chance, yes. Or Russell Wilson on offense, too.
All right. So tell us your quick prediction for LeGarrette Blount, Tom Brady, and Rob Gronkowski in terms of what games you expect them to have.
Rob Gronkowski is going to get 6 catches, maybe like 75 yards, something like that. Because the thing about it this way, he's not going to get the chance to run over guys. Because think about it. He ran over some Colts and some Ravens in the playoff games with his monstrous catches. But think again, do you think Cam Chancellor and Earl Thomas give a shit? They're going to hit him as hard as they humanly can. And you know what? He's not going to be ready for it because he's never played against a defense that hits you as hard as this one. That plus the fact that, they're going to make sure that no one beats them deep. Because, again, the Patriots have no deep threat. The Seahawks bring their guys up. They don't have to respect the deep ball because they know that Brady's not going to get enough time to complete it. Now, as for Brady, maybe 60% completion, maybe 300-something yards, maybe 2 touchdowns, a pick, something along those lines. LeGarrette Blount will probably have about 75 yards, but it's going to take him a bunch of carries to get to that point.
So he's not going to have a Colts type of game like he did last 2 years.
The Colts and the Ravens fronts, again, you can't really compare the Raven game because they ran for 14 yards. The Colts game, again, it's a terrible analogy because it's 2 different styles of defense. One defense which is vastly inferior to the other. That's not a good comparison. It's not a healthy one. But, again, Blunt's going to get his 75, 80 yards, but it's going to take him a bunch of carries to get to that point. In fact, there's a part of me that even thinks that if the Seahawks do get a small edge, that the Patriots might abandon the running game entirely.
Well, James, it looks like we have basically said everything we needed to say. I mean, we basically both agreed that we think Seattle would win. So, I mean, there really isn't a lot of diversification in what we think. I mean, we've talked about this before. You brought up a lot of good points. So I just have one more question for you, James. If Marshawn Lynch wins the Super Bowl MVP, what is he going to say to the media?
You're asking me. I'm the wrong guy to ask.
Come on, James. Tell us. What is Marshawn Lynch going to say if he wins the Super Bowl MVP?
Oh, shit. He's probably going to have something good. He's probably going to be like, I might go to Disney World or something like that. He's going to troll the media people.
And why was he there? Why was he at Media Day a couple days ago, James? What was the reason?
Just so he wouldn't get fined.
All right, guys. We're just having a little bit of...
My opinion for the score is that, again, New England is the 1-point favorite, but I'm looking for Seattle to win by about 3 or 4 points, somewhere in that range, because, again, I think this will be a very close game, but it has the potential for either side to really blow the other one out. If Seattle's not playing good on defense and Tom Brady's playing well, then that could be a blowout. If the Patriots aren't giving a good day on offense and Russell Wilson's feeling it better than he did in the NFC title game, Seahawks win in a blowout. But again, I think both teams are going to come ready to play. And I think that Seattle, all chips on the table, maybe 28-24.
Wow, James, that you stole, like, that is so unfair, James. I was just going to make my score prediction. I think it's going to be 28-24, and I think if the Patriots do find a way to win, it has to be Brady. I don't think it could be anybody else who could possibly
it's not going to
win.
be, LeGarrette Blount is not, the cast-off from the Steelers is not going to beat the Seahawks in the Super Bowl. Not going to happen.
What about Vince Wilfork?
Well, he's dangerous when he intercepts the football. I will give him that.
He's a very small guy too, and he's the fastest guy on the team. All right, so I'm just kidding, guys. We're just having fun. But yeah, guys, I know this video's been very, very, very long, but that's been our Super Bowl prediction for the year. We both think Seattle takes this. We both want Seattle to take this. But thank you guys for watching this video, and please share your thoughts in the comment section below. If you're a Patriots fan, I'm sorry if we offended you, but you know, honestly, because he's a Steelers fan and I'm a Dolphins fan, there's no way we could root for you guys. So that's basically been it, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed
If it was the Cowboys, I'd be rooting for the Patriots. Not gonna lie.
Oh, if it was the Cowboys, I'd root for the Cowboys. I hate to say it. There's no team that comes close to the amount of hatred I have for the Patriots, only because of the fact that we're in the same division. But that's been our video for today, guys. We will probably make a post-game. As a matter of fact, we will make a post-game discussion based off of what happens in the actual Super Bowl to share our thoughts. All of our predictions are in this, so I mean, there really isn't much to say. We said who we think will win the Super Bowl MVP and everything else, and some statistics. So most importantly, over everything else, please what, James?
Please remember to rate, comment, and subscribe. And at the end of Qaaman's videos, he always says to have a great day, guys, and I always say to take care and have a good one, everybody.
Yes, guys, what James said. All right, hold on. Let me get rid of this burp real quick. Hold on. Where is it? There we go. I'm going to put that in as a blooper.
You should. That'd be funny as hell.
All right.